Hello everybody, I hope you're keeping well. I hope you had a lovely festive season, and I'd also like to take this opportunity to wish each and every one of you a happy, healthy and empowering 2025. This is, I believe, the year when things change in our favour. It's probably about 4 weeks now since I made my first ARLA video, so I thought this might be an opportune time to come on and have another chat about how things are going. It's been an enlightening one too, and I must thank each and every one of you who has subscribed or commented, liked or shared for all your support and the sharing of any information that we may not have already known. I don't know everything. Nobody knows everything. So this is about coming together and sharing our thoughts and experiences and ideas in order to create a better world for ourselves. I suppose the first thing I should do is thank a few people. So this is a little on the hoof, if you pardon the expression, but there's a couple of people I would like to give a shout out to. The first person I'm going to give a shout out to is KB. Thank you so much for all your encouragement and support and sharing of information. It's been really valuable and very much appreciated. The second person I would like to give a shout out is to Carrie of Budget Cooking UK. Now, if you haven't checked this channel out, I suggest that you do. Carrie is in the Colchester area and has been to various supermarkets in her area to see what dairy products they are stocking. She also helpfully posted a link to a lot of dairy codes. There was about 133 pages of codes. Now this I did share in a community post probably a couple of weeks ago. So if you haven't checked out any of my posts, I suggest that you do, because there are quite a few. I've had one or two comments in the last day or two pointing me in her direction when already I am following her. I found her, she popped up in my algorithm, and I'd already shared a couple of her videos on my posts, my community posts. So I suggest that if you haven't looked at them, it might be a good idea if you do, because I don't really want this space to become an echo chamber. The same goes too for the Lidl thing. Now, when I first made the video, Lidl, we believed, was not using ARLA, but within days, Kerry went over to Lidl after being tipped off that they were using ARLA, and true to form, they were. And I posted that on my community page. I will link a screenshot of how my page looks, so you know where to click to look at those posts. So here's my page. Along here you have all the tabs. So you click on posts, and here we go. This video contains the links to the codes. There we go, there's the ARLA one. There's the note about Lidl, and so on and so forth. So that's basically how you find the posts. Now, as I said, I will put the link in the description to the codes that Kerry shared on her YouTube. But here is the screenshot of the unsafe codes to look out for that were on her video yesterday about the co-op. Kerry is looking to compile an extensive list of safe farms, dairies and other producers. Now, I added one or two in the comments under that video. We know there's a few out there already. We've got Full Fart Milk, No Bovair, Caremore, and also the Food Finders Hub, but they don't include every Bovair-free producer because they rely on either those producers declaring it or for us to give them the information. Iceland's supermarket, as Kerry points out, has contracts with ARLA and Freshways. Freshways are Bovair-free, but Iceland alternate between the two. So the codes should come in useful. Take the codes with you on your shopping trip and refer to them. As for the very, very, very long list in the link, I suggest that if you don't want to print off 133 pages, that you keep it in the file section on your smartphone. Remember as well that areas can vary, so a supermarket in one area may or may not be doing the same in another area. We don't know for sure. So it's important that we all have our lists with us when going out shopping if we want to avoid consuming anything that contains Bovair. That would be my advice anyway, because we're still all flaming around in the dark and having to do our own research because nobody at the core of the known is telling us anything, which to me is wrong. So I will come back to Kerry again in a little bit, but I want to give a couple of other shout outs. First to ALP8409. Your comments regarding Article 3 of Assimilated EU Regulation 1169 2011, which stipulates the requirement for consumers to be able to make informed choices, in particular regarding health, economic, environmental, social and ethical consideration, has been so helpful to some of us. At Theresa Marie 1379 said, I emailed the Food Standards Agency, or FSA, last week using their online form, and they replied and very kindly told me that this was safe and directed me to a government blog that reiterated this point. They missed the point of my email completely, which was to ask for labelling so that I could make the choice as to whether to buy milk potentially affected by this additive or not. I am going to reply to the FSA to make my points again, and now you have given me the extra information I needed. This is in reply to the EU regulation that ALP 8409 shared. Perfect, thank you. I encourage others to get in touch with them too. I'll come back to this in a bit. So now I'll talk again a bit more about Kerry of Budget Cooking UK. So yesterday she put out a new video where she visits the co-op in Colchester to see where they source their own label dairy from. But first she showed a video by a Northern Irish dairy farmer called Farm Theory on TikTok. She thinks his name is Andrew. Now, I don't use TikTok, but if any of you do, I agree with Kerry. You should go along and check out his videos, which are scientific. He's trying to break down the science of farming and food. Now, in this TikTok video, he talks about recurring costs and capped benefit. He says, the use of methane reducing additives is fundamentally flawed and thanks the British public for the backlash because it was going to cost farmers a fortune. He's quite tongue-in-cheek. At one point, one of his calves gets loose. Oh, just hang on a minute, I've just got to get a calf. Methane inhibitors are for a capped benefit, but a recurring cost. A combination that is totally unique in the world of carbon reduction strategies. Methane inhibitors reduce the amount of methane entering the atmosphere, and because methane naturally breaks down to CO2 and water over 12 years, the pool of atmospheric methane gradually reduces. However, after 12 years, the pool of atmospheric methane has stabilised. This means that no further reduction is possible. Hence, you have a capped benefit. In other words, you're not going to get any more benefit after that 12-year period. That's it. Finished. Finito. However, to maintain that benefit, you must feed the additive indefinitely, forever. Hence the recurring cost. Comparing methane inhibitors to other carbon reduction strategies, if a coal-fired power station, for example, is replaced with renewable energy, once the coal plant has gone, the benefits keep growing year on year. It is a non-capped recurring benefit strategy. As for planting trees, as forests grow, they will capture CO2, but eventually they will reach a saturation point. They are capped. However, they only have a one-time cost up front and not a recurring cost. Methane inhibitors, on the other hand, have a capped benefit after 12 years and yet an incredibly high recurring cost because that feed is really expensive. Which is why, the farmer says, these people making these rules are so daft. If farmers were forced to use methane inhibitors, it would be an ongoing eternal cost for a very limited short-term benefit, which isn't self-sustainable at all, either financially or environmentally. Methane inhibitors just make zero sense, especially when there is much better, more cost-effective methods to address climate change rather than putting synthetic chemicals into the food chain. Hence why a lot of farmers, he says, are so pleased to see the public backlash against this stupid ideology. As farmers, he says, we are constantly told that the consumer is king. New rules, new regulations, we are told it's because the consumer is demanding it. But now the consumer has spoken loud and clear. No to synthetic chemicals like 3-nitrooxypropanol or 3-NOP in the food chain. And yet retailers keep digging their heels in and refuse to listen to the consumers, or the farmers, or anybody else at all who has a different opinion from theirs. This has exposed the reality of the situation. Consumer demand, the farmer says, is often just a convenient excuse for a small number of people to push their agenda onto family farmers. like himself. If the consumer really is kink, he points out, he says it's time the retailers listened and dropped the insanity of methane inhibitors, because they make zero sense. The fact they have even got this far tells me, he says, there must be a lot of money involved. Oh yeah, follow the money. Ooh. He says his main goal with his climate videos is to reach the public and counter the narrative pushed by the mainstream media that his dairy cows are killing the planet. The second goal is to educate farmers so they can challenge those who are elected to represent them and ask what they are doing to fight the gross unfairness in the current carbon calculation system, because it is unfair. The reality is that climate scientists know that what he says is true, and what they will not tell farmers is that by forcing farmers out of business, by forcing them to cut numbers, it buys society more time. It allows more people to continue to fly off on holidays on their jets and for them to drive their cars on the road, and that is grossly unfair. And the only people who are going to fight our corner and stand up for farmers is ourselves, because nobody else is doing it for us. He's talking about farmers and enlightened folk as well. Now, when he says that again, it's kind of slightly tongue-in-cheek, because it's not necessarily, or it's not limited to people going away on holiday, which is still allowed. What he's pointing out is the hypocrisy of everything, but also what they do in their jets multiple times. But of course, with everything, one needs to be careful what one says, in case the algorithm decides you've said something that you shouldn't have, which isn't deemed acceptable. Now, Kerry says that Kerrygold butter, which claims to be bovine free, is produced by an Irish dairy company called ARLA, who, like Muller, is fully on board with the bovine. ARLA make Pilgrim's Choice and also supply many of the UK supermarket-owned cheeses, including Sainsbury's. She's not sure whether Iceland get theirs produced by ARLA as well, but we could check that out now with the codes next time we go there. In the Co-op Colchester supermarket, the organic semi-skimmed milk was £2.75. Now, the carton looked like 2 litres. She didn't say what size carton it was, but I presume it was a 2-litre container, which is the most expensive yet. The non-organic milk and the cream are both produced by Muller. The non-organic Greek-style yoghurt was made by Yo Valley, which became part of the ARLA family in 2018. Now, I will look at some of your questions and comments and talk a little about some of those. I had 247 comments under my first ARLA video. Some of those were my replies, because I endeavoured to reply to everybody. I'm sorry if I did leave anybody out, it wasn't intentional. There's some really good comments and also questions. I've pulled some of them out anyway. Paul Komisky 8647 says, I recall a story saying British organic milk is, for the most part, shipped abroad where it is worth more. Organic milk sold in the UK is produced cheaply in India, dehydrated, shipped and then rehydrated in the UK. Somehow this then makes it produced in the UK. At Stephen Mars 8775 replied, I have been questioning the whole organic supermarket fad lately and wondering where they are getting it all for such a huge supply and demand. What would hydrating entail? Which is a good question. I'm not, though, sure about the accuracy of that story. The jury is still out on this one. I would like to see the story, if anybody can find it, and point it in my direction, and any other evidence as well, before we take this further or investigate it further and ask questions of those who are supposed to represent us and ensure that the food we consume is safe to do so. As Marilyn Amos 3542 says, organic rules in the UK are very strict. For example, they will not allow bovine feed in anything certified organic. If that were to be found in organic produce, the company who was producing it would have their certification withdrawn, because bovine is a chemical which is potentially toxic on account of a 3-nitrooxypropanol. And if you don't recall the side effects and the handling instructions for that, hang on until later in the video, because I will read some of them out just to refresh our memory. There are indeed many questions to ask, and we are being kept in the dark about many things, but we would need to see any further evidence to back the story up. Not just to hold those to account, responsible, but also in order to make informed decisions about the organics we also consume, not just the regular. We need to use our instincts and become more discerning about the stories we read or are told. And that is something that we don't always have, because as nature, we as humans tend to be gullible and believe what we're told. And that makes us easy targets for deceit and other negative impacts. Chrissy P7433 says, trust and government are two words that are impossible to use together. I do not trust a single word they say, and I mean any word they say. At DD7521, I don't shop at Asda, but they are relabelling their milk without the ARLA logo. I believe your sister told you about it. That's excellent, thanks. If there's any chance we can find out for ourselves, then I suggest we do. Taking the list that Kerry gave us, I don't know indeed whether she has done an Asda video yet, or I thought she might have done, or whether that's out of date if they've suddenly decided to take the labelling off. We'll take a look. Anyway, if anybody has any more information about it, please let us know. And thanks so much for subscribing to my channel. Really appreciate it. At Christine Harrington -CV1KG, when you Google Cravendale and ARLA, it describes it as being the healthiest and longer lasting milk for us all. Oh, well, quite. That's interesting. Standard market spiel now. I believe that if a product is really top notch, then no bragging is required, as the quality speaks for itself. At Gugu554 says, cows have produced methane since time began and humanity has survived and thrived. They need to be left alone as nature intended. CO2 is one of the gases of life. Thank you. Totally agree. at clown stalkers. That's where the public must help find your local farms there, not selling to supermarkets. But if we don't buy from farmers, they won't survive. Absolutely. And we all need to keep helping each other and sharing of information and keeping ourselves and others informed. We're all in this boat, if you like, through no fault of our own. Kerry has pointed out that because of the way things are, farmers may be tied into contracts through no fault of their own. Yes, we must take that on board because, as I said in my last video, the Farmer Head Initiative mentions, if you like, incentives for those farmers who do take part in their trials. We need to remember that farmers may feel disenfranchised and not know how to get out of contracts to remain viable because of the inheritance tax rules and all the other levies that they face. And we also need to ask, what support are they going to get from the likes of ARLA when it all hits the fan? And of course the other food companies they're tied in with. They will probably be just left to clear the whole sorry mess up themselves. We need to remember that. Don't necessarily outright blame the farmers who are taking part in it. At Time Tangle 100, fortunately, I have always used organic dairy and veg. However, I no longer go to any supermarket for food, only household goods. Within the last 2 weeks, I've sourced a farm for raw milk, organic milk and own dairy and meat. A local farm shop for local produced fruit and veg, and also an online supplier for organic dried food, dried veg, sugar, flour, tea, coffee, etc. All of this is doable. Cook everything yourself and you know exactly what you are getting. You find the time and work out the economics if you want your family to be healthy. Ask questions. Farmers and food suppliers who care for the land, animals and us, the people, will answer your questions to your satisfaction. Yes, that's a huge point. Well done. At DT Slot Racing says, we are in quite a dangerous situation for our farmers. I'm beginning to think they knew we boycott and that they would speed up their destruction of farms quickly. And many town folk and city folk have no means of getting good produce. There's too many knock-on effects that could go against us and the farmers. And I think that's what the Northern Irish farmer was also alluding to as well. I do think that is part of the plan. It's certainly a big financial gain, and what benefit are we actually getting? I mean, I find the whole thing horrendous. If you think that you could be feeding your children and babies something that's been dosed with Bovaer feed. I also think it's important to do what we can and help each other as much as we can, shop wisely, and also start to become more proficient in self-sufficiency. Once the food supplies start to dry up, then our lives may well depend on farmers, not just health. The farmers, incidentally, are planning a blockade of supermarkets on the 10th of January 2025, and I think for about 3 hours. If they don't get the response they're looking for, they're going to carry on longer. Now, most of us, if we're savvy, will support farmers because our health and life depend on it. So I think most of us will be prepared to do without if necessary, even if that means going without things. I understand if somebody is on very limited means financially or may have a disability, which makes it difficult for them to do as much as they would like. Everything is going up in the shops, so eating healthily can be a real concern. So what I think is good is if we maybe start organising sharing schemes. So we've got Food Finders Hub, so you can go on, there's more people joining every day and you can find supplies in your own area. And I would also ask that anybody who is a producer gets themselves registered on that hub. Very, very, very few producers have put themselves on there in the Thanet area, and I'm sure there's others like it as well. There is a ambassador for the Thanet area. I'll put the Thanet one up on the screen. The ambassadors go and spread the word. But exchange and barter schemes are also maybe a good idea. So if somebody hasn't got much, maybe needs a bag of flour or, I don't know, a couple of pounds of potatoes or whatever, there may be some little thing that they can give in exchange for those items, such as maybe, if you're not well, walk the dog for them, or feed the cats if you have to go out in a hurry and you trust them, or mend something, for example, or clean the windows. There's always something that we can exchange. Maybe if you've got a little space at home, start growing a few bits and pieces. Maybe you have a community gardening scheme that yourself and others are or can become involved in as well. So there's all these things we can do. There are of course also community shopping hubs, but of course you would need to be careful of where the milk was sourced from. But you can buy a £5 membership a year and do so many shops a week. There's different price points: a £5 shop, a £7.50 shop, a £10 shop, a £12.50 shop. It may vary from place to place. There's one down in Ramsgate at St George the Martyr, and there's also a soup kitchen there as well, should anybody in my area need it. Dan and I are hardly using supermarkets at all. We're using Fen Farm now on a subscription. Every 4 weeks we're getting 3 litres of raw milk and other raw milk products to begin with. We had some cheeses and milk and skyr type yoghurt over the Christmas period, and very nice it was too. We've still got some left. Beautiful. We also get organic milk and free range eggs and Tom Parker cream from Milk and More, and also Tim's dairy yoghurt as well. If we have a glut of milk, which did happen before Christmas because we had a lot come together with Christmas falling over our delivery schedule, we put it in the freezer. Milk does freeze successfully for a few weeks, but we soon got through it. We do have a local farm shop as well, Rose Farm Shop, that we support. They are not yet, I noticed, on the Food Finders Hub, even though I did tag them on Instagram on one of my posts. They still haven't signed up, so I will do that again, and next time we go I will give them a leaflet about it. It's an easy process and it doesn't cost anything. And They sell a lot of locally produced stuff as well. We don't always get to go there because it's on Hayne Road, which isn't on the bus route. And if we're busy at weekends with other commitments, or if Dan's at work, he has the car because he's a piano tuner and travels with his job. I don't have a car, I can't get there. Sometimes I'll go down to one of the local butchers and buy free range eggs from there. But I really like the eggs from Rose Farm Shop and get them whenever possible. We also use Riverford Organic for veg boxes, and they also do the Brown Cow Organics range of dairy products, and Riverford have declared themselves bovine free because they are organic. At Imogen Nichols 812, she said to me, very informative video, thank you, deeply concerning. Just started to get my milk from a farm called Udderley, which produces both organic and raw milk, and you can purchase it online. This is very useful to know. So Udderley, if nobody has mentioned Udderley in any of Kerry's videos, please do get a chance and go and pop it in there in the comments box. If you are in an area such as Northamptonshire, where it, I believe, is a bit more difficult to directly source farm produce and such, like farmers markets or whatever, buying it online is another good option, as well as Udderley. I think McQueen's, correct me if I'm wrong, I think McQueen's Dairies, they supply nationwide. Graham's Dairies is nationwide. Fen Farm, which we're using, is, and many others. Plurendon Farm in Kent has declared itself bovine free. They do regular delivery. So if you're in Kent, go and check them out. But literally just have a little tap into your search engine and see what's there for you if none of them are on any of the sites I have mentioned. At Wild Woodlands SW, thanks for this great information. Myself and a few friends are working on getting local farm deliveries and also raw milk. On a funny note, I'm pretty sure I was the person who coined the phrase full fart milk before the phrase was being used. I told my friend I think it will catch on in the zeitgeist, and it definitely has. LOL. Well done. Bravo. Brilliant term. Full fart milk. Fantastic. I'm not surprised it's caught on. You should have copywritten it. You could have been rich by now. Oh wow. At Sue Kerwin said we should have consent, but this has been going on for years and we're only just being made aware of it. I have for a while now been buying organic where I can, but I'm going to even more so now. And at J Walker 3087 said the dairy farm in Sheepwash, North Devon is an ARLA producer. Thanks for that. At One Planet 730 says that Greg's the Baker's is using mullen milk for all hot drinks. So if you don't want to be consuming any bovine, avoid them. At Paul Jones 3073 says products are not labelled. Yes, this is something else I'm going to touch on in a bit. It will damage thousands of farmers who are not using bovine quite. And at Colin Cox 1716, the dairy cow has a stressful life as it is without altering its natural digestive system. Leave the dairy cow alone to do what it does best, mothering and natural milk. Quite. At Jill Mosley WO9MF. Unless you only use organic milk products, how can we be sure that the milk from farmers who are not participating in this experiment isn't mixed with milk with that is from cows being fed bovine? We can't, because it probably is all mixed together. As at Alvina Sun 8055 says, it shouldn't be in the food, full stop. At Flora or 7Z, I have discovered that Booth's supermarkets sell South Lakes organic milk that is bovine free. Also, my local dairy has come out saying likewise. I have been making my own live yoghurt for a few years, so I'm okay there. Now I'm just researching cheeses, although I've made my own mozzarella a couple of times. So yes, I too have been looking into this rather disturbing situation. Both people and animals need healthy, natural digestive systems. At Simon VL6RQ says it's Danish, innit? ARLA is huge. They've been doing this in Europe for a while now. Not telling us first is a crime in my eyes. Absolutely, it is wrong. Now, there's been a number of comments on X as well that I'd like to talk about. Someone asked whether anybody knows if the Bill Gates Ruminate is being used in the UK because they can't find any details. One response was that New Zealand, Australia and Brazil use ruminate and the UK imports from all three. So be extra careful when you source your meat and dairy or when eating out. June Slater heard a rumour that Aldi's meat and dairy suppliers don't use bovine, but EL Contador 2000 said that's incorrect for the UK, although in Australia it is correct. So Aldi's meat and dairy suppliers are using bovine, potentially. At Just Another User and others had written to Aldi UK, who refused to comment at all about it. Bear in mind, they are incredibly active and basically reply to everything, which speaks volumes. Read into it what you will. Yes, indeed. Mark Whiston said he tried to ask Aldi and they refused to tell him, which to me is a bit of a red flag. It should be outright illegal to not say what is in food, etc. Absolutely. Someone else said, I've stopped buying all meat and dairy from Aldi. I'm not happy that I pay more now, but happy that I'm helping local farmers and butchers. It tastes better too. Yes, it certainly does. Pay as much as you can afford, even if for a smaller quantity, and supplement with pulses, fresh fruit and vegetables. We all need to be more assertive though when asking about food and drink. I don't care if I upset somebody by simply asking whether their dairy products are from ARLA or not, or where they source the dairy products from. I have no problem asking at all. We all need to be more assertive and not worry about what they think of us. I will carry on asking. And if I'm not happy with the answer, I won't consume any dairy. I now want to give a big shout out to at Anna's Food Lifestyle. Go and have a look at her video, Shocking FSA Response. Like many others, Anna wrote to the FSA under a Freedom of Information request because there's many questions that she and others, most of us in fact, have not had answered. This is the reason why everything has kicked off. The Food Standards Agency is the organisation that approved the use of bovine following following some kind of trial between autumn last year and spring this year. They have seen all the details, presumably, and all the findings or tests, so they do know, hence they have approved Bovaer. The questions that have been forwarded by Anna and others include: has anybody consulted the public about using the additive before putting this to the test? Will the product, the meat and milk, be put to the public whilst they are doing their testing? How long will the testing take place? Because they haven't said. Is it 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 months, 2 years, a year, 3 years, 10 years? We need to know. Will there be any requirements to label the produce? That's what we want, to know whether it has or doesn't. Some of us would like to go further and have it banned altogether. Criteria for the safety, i.e. how they tested it. Has it been tested on rats? Have they given it to cows? Will there be any potential long-term problems with fertility, for example? We kind of know the answer to that, actually, if you read data sheets. However, we're asking them under the Freedom of Information Act. If they'd been honest from the outset, then there wouldn't have been such a huge backlash, perhaps, or perhaps not. Anyway, this is the reply Anna got. Unfortunately, we are unable to respond to this correspondence under the terms of Request of Information Act. This is not an information request for the information because it doesn't fall within certain categories. Therefore, we consider this not to be valid. FSA is not required to create new information or provide prospective answers to the questions that cannot be answered directly with held records. So they're not required to create new information unless they have this on record. But wait, in order to get this approved, surely they would have records, wouldn't they? That's how the Freedom of Information Act works. You hold information, or you ought to, so that people can ask questions under the Act. Well, apparently they don't hold this information. The Freedom of Information Act applies only to any recorded information which the FSA already held at the time of your request, which in Anna's case was only 3 weeks ago. Go figure. Autumn, spring, now, a year, a bit more, not even 3 weeks ago. Presumably all the tests were done last year because Bovaer was approved to be used between September, October last year and spring this year. There's varied reports about when it was actually approved. But it's still a big gap in terms of the timeline between the approval and the requests. As the request posing questions about additives, we consider this to be an inquiry which can be handled under the course of normal business. So this is an inquiry and not information request. So they forwarded the information to somewhere else. They're basically telling us to make an information request. So they want us to email ARLA and ask them for the information. Well, the information they would point you to is 5 pages of research which tells you it is safe. None of the pages tell you the length of the tests they're planning to do or the labelling, and chances are if you email and ask them the same questions asked of the FSA, they would not answer them because it is not in their interest to tell us that. But the whole thing is baffling in that the FSA has approved Bovaer and yet they're saying that they don't hold any information. So if that isn't suspicious, what is? Now, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I did say this in the comments under Anna's video, I actually wrote to ARLA UK through the contact form. That was the only way I could do it. I couldn't do it under the Freedom of Information Act either, as it has been a private company for some years now. I'll put since when up there. Not a public company, which is, I think you might agree, for a large food business, a bit convenient. Now, I put this in one of my community posts, and you can go and have a look at it, but I will read it out. I have read your Bovaer statement, but like many people, I'm still not satisfied that the dairy produced from cattle who are dosed with Bovaer is safe to consume without side effects. As like many, I am under the impression that no long-term trials were undertaken before it was rolled out. Though please do correct me if I am wrong, together with the relevant evidence to support your assertions. I write as a member of the public to request that you publish the names of those 30 farms taking part in the Bovaer feed trial in accordance with Article 3 of Assimilated EU Regulation 1169/2011, which lays out economic, environmental, social and ethical considerations. I'm sure you will appreciate that the general public have the right to know what is going into the food chain and how the food we eat is being produced before it reaches our tables, as well as more detailed labelling. This enables us to make our own informed choices and decisions, as well as providing more transparency in accordance with Article 3 above. I also ask whether you have any plans to publish the data from trials undertaken, as studies would certainly be required in order for it to be approved for experimental use in the food chain in the first place. Unredacted, in capitals, data gives people the opportunity to reach their own conclusions and may help to allay any suspicions and fears. Thank you for your assistance, and I look forward to hearing from you in due course. And I'm now going to read out a comment on one of the bowler hat farmers videos from a gentleman called @Graham Kelland. As an ARLA milk supplier producer, the vast majority of UK ARLA milk producers do not feed Bovaer to their cows. It's only the experimental farms that have been trialling the product. Like most other ARLA milk producers, in brackets farmers, I have no intention to feed Bovaer to our cows because we consider our cows. ARLA will try and push the product on us farmers by price penalties, but grassroots farmers are against the use of the product, and ARLA would do well to drop Bovaer. They're trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist. And that's what I've spoken about earlier in this video. Now then, not content at writing to ARLA and miffed at not having had a response from either ARLA or Lidl to my written requests, I wrote to my MP, Polly Billington, for East Fayette. I won't read the whole thing, however, I have mentioned a number of the things we have discussed in this video. I started off though with saying Coming from a Lakeland farming family, I, like many others, like to voice my concern about the ARLA Muller Farmerhead project being trialled with 3 major supermarkets and 30 farmers in the UK to feed their cows and cattle Bovaer, a methane reducing chemical containing a substance called 3-NOP. The project claims that 1 teaspoon added to feed can reduce enteric methane emissions from cows on average by between 27% and 30%. However, 3-NOP is a potentially toxic substance, so I talk about how heating 3-NOP may cause a fire, self-reactive substances and mixtures, organic peroxides. 3-NOP can seriously irritate or corrode the skin. 3-NOP can cause serious eye damage or irritation. It may cause respiratory irritation, including organ toxicity from single exposure and respiratory tract irritation, and it's suspected of causing reproductive toxicity, damaging fertility of the unborn child. And then I talked about the handling instructions, including wear personal protective gear, including eyewear, dust mask and impervious gloves, wash hands after handling, rinse eyes thoroughly with water if there is an accidental eye exposure. Now, I do most of the things in the course of any work I undertake as a French polisher. So I actually took a course in French polishing, and there's a lot of chemicals in French polishing, and you have to do all these things when dealing in particular with things like paint stripper and shellac and other chemicals used in the French polishing and finishing process. So I asked her whether all that sounded safe to her and what are the long-term implications, and I asked other questions as well, such as I failed to understand how the use of such toxic chemicals might be described as contributing to the environment and sustainability, or indeed why the Food Standards Agency would improve the use of the Bovaer feed. Also, please note that Bovaer feed is not permitted for use in certified organic farming under Soil Association regulations because it contains a potentially harmful chemical. And it went on at some length. So, for example, I spoke about the concern about the lack of product labelling and transparency, how some, for example, will say produce for Aldi by ARLA, and yet others produced for Tesco with the Tesco address and nothing else. I also said that I had written to ARLA and had no response, which is concerning. I also asked where was the consumer consultation or informed consent. Surely the electorate have the right to know the origins and ingredients of the food we're consuming in order to make an informed decision about whether or not we wish to avoid them. I also talked about the ethical behaviour of major supermarkets and food producers with regard to farmers, whether farmers are being pushed in a corner and forced to take incentives in order to stay afloat as well because of inheritance tax and other levies. Is that an ethical or moral way of treating farmers who put food on our tables? Farming is not just a job, it's a vocation and way of life that's passed down from generation to generation. And I asked whether it's possible that toxins might permeate the whole food chain, posing danger to our health and well-being, animals, wildlife, natural habitats and biodiversity. And do we not have the right to know which of the 30 farmers taking part in the Beauvais initiative in order to decide for ourselves whether to avoid them or not? I said some will, some won't, but then isn't that the same with anything? Choice is key. And I said, in my opinion, the supermarkets, food manufacturers and dairies who dose their cattle with Beauvais should clearly state this in accordance with Article 3 and so on and so forth. I said, with supermarkets and food producers such as ARLA acting in such an underhand way, it might beg the question if we can even trust the organic label. Furthermore, if products are not clearly labelled or omit vital information, as sometimes seems to be the case, this lack of transparency might damage thousands of farmers who are not dosing their cattle with Beauvais. So I asked her to raise the matter with Steve Reed, Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, and or, if appropriate, the National Trading Standards Agency, as well as the FSA. And that basically is it in a nutshell. Now, I want to pose a question. Have you written to your MP? If you have, let me know, because I do think all of us should do it. However, somebody asked me on, I think it was Kerry's channel, whether I would share my letter. And the reason I won't is because I think we all need to put in our concerns in our own words rather than copying a template. Because if our emails are all the same, then the MP is just going to ignore it. The main thing is to get our concerns in and happily flood their inboxes and the filing and their letter boxes. This is how things start to move along to our benefit, and keep sharing information with one another. I believe that sending an email to your MP in your own words has more clout, more power than simply copying somebody else's email or maybe just tweaking a few words. Your MP is more likely to ignore emails that are all the same. If you can, use personal examples. For example, Don and I have a friend who is a type 1 diabetic and he can only consume lactose-free milk. ARLA appears to be the only lactose-free milk producer. If you know of any others though, please let me know. Finally, I have instigated a petition through the Parliament website, which is waiting to be approved. They say they have a big backlog of petitions, and I'm sure they do. Now, there are a few petitions on change.org, and I will link them above. I will also endeavour to put the links in the description to this video and encourage everybody to sign and share. They haven't garnered a huge support because change depends on donations in order to progress the petitions, which is not the case on the Parliament website. And because the Parliament website is very popular, is likely to garner more support. I hope my petition is approved. Let's put that up to the universe, manifest. Once it is, because I'm a positive person. Once it is, I will share it in a video and or a community post. So look out for that. I won't say any more about it at this point in time, but I think you may be able to guess what I have asked for. And on that note, I will leave it here. This is a very long video. If you made it to the end, thanks so much. And I will see you again soon and look forward to reading your comments. So bye for now.